So my name is Alan Hodge, and I am the fiscal specialist at the Bursar's office. And I just wanted to introduce some general points about what our office does, and indicate how we're going to be available to you as students and parents here at the university. So we'll go ahead and get started on that. You may hear us referred to as student accounts as well. We are both. So just to stop any confusion that may happen right off the bat, we're both the bursar's office and we are the student accounts department, technically at the same time. So in case there was any confusion there, no need to worry. So what do we do exactly? First of all, you can reach us at that website address there at the top. You can also just search for student accounts on the William and Mary main website and will be the first result that comes up. Alternatively, you can search for Bursar and we should come up quickly as well. But generally speaking, what we do is we are in charge of applying the charges and credits to the students' accounts. We're also in charge of receiving payments at the cashier's office. We prepare and provide e-bills for the students based on their enrollment here at the college. We manage payment plans for them as well if they'd like to enroll in them. We do apply holds and late fees for overdue balances. We process third-party payments from scholarships and awards. We process refunds to student accounts that do have credit balances on them for whatever reason. We'll get more into that later. We prepare the 1098-T tax form for the tax filing, which I know is important and does usually generate a lot of questions. We verify authorizations. Essentially what that is there's a requirement for our students to vet the people that have access to their financial information. So the Dean of Students office is in charge of that. And we just verify that the people that we're talking to do have the authorization to that information. It's a simple process, and I assume we'll get more into that as well as I continue. And then finally, we manage e-services. E-services is the online portal where students and authorized users can view the student's account as well as make payments digitally and remotely. All right, so for the first point, the application of charges and posting of payments, this is kind of just a breakdown of some of those ideas here. The charges that we apply for student accounts include, but are not necessarily limited to, tuition and fees, obviously, and then we do the housing and meal plan charge application as well. The health insurance charge is going to come through the student account. And then certain miscellaneous fees do come through the student account. The student health center's charges are consistently there if the student is utilizing the health center and they're paying that additional surcharge for medication or a visit or whatever. The library sometimes will put a like an overdue book charge on a student's account. I think tutoring is one of those ones where it's kind of a case-by-case basis, depending on if the student is involved in a tutoring program where they do need to pay or not. That's kind of up to that specific asset of William & Mary to decide how they do their pricing, but we will place the charges on if there are applicable. And then on the payment side, payments can come in from check or money order. Those can be received at the cashier's office here at Blow Memorial Hall, where our office is. We can also receive payments internationally over Flywire. And then we can receive payments digitally via ACH or electronic check on e-services. And also then through e-services, you can access PayPath, which is a credit card processor to pay via card. That comes with a 2.95% service charge fee. That isn't charged by the college, that's charged by PayPath. It's not something that we can waive. It does include debit cards if you're using your debit card in the PayPath area of e-services. And let's go ahead and keep going. So e-bills. This is going to be basically the statement function of our billing process. So we're going to assess the fees to the student account, and those fees are just going to exist there until they're taken care of. But what we do is we essentially publish a monthly statement for everybody so that they're aware of the health of their student account. those are usually going to be published on the 10th of the month, and they're usually going to be due on the 1st of the following month. Obviously, if it's a weekend or a holiday, we'll adjust the due date and the release date as necessary. But you'll receive an email as an authorized user or a student letting you know that there is a new e-statement available on e-services to view. Those e-statements can be printed out, they can be saved as PDFs, and they can be referenced and used to pay the bill. They can be used to request money from 529s, etc. So we make those available on a monthly basis. And it will have a breakdown of a separation of some of those previous charges that we talked about, where you're going to see the tuition is separate from housing and meals, for instance. Those three things will be on separate lines. The general fee is grouped with tuition in most cases, however, that is not broken out. That's going to be a part of the general tuition and mandatory fees line. Let's see, let's keep going. So when to expect the first bill of each semester? This is also a pretty common question, especially from newly attending students and parents. For the fall semester, the bill date is going to be in July, so it should come out mid-July, and it will be due August 1st. Seems like a pretty sharp due date, but ultimately there are some options to you available, specifically the payment plan, which I'll get into in more detail. But for the spring semester, that bill date is going to be mid-December, and it's going to be due on the 1st or near the 1st of January. And then finally, for our summer term, which is an optional term in most cases, that bill comes out in May and it's due June 1st. Okay, so the payment plan. This payment plan is a sort of a one-size-fits-all approach to payment plans. There's a $50 enrollment fee to use this payment plan. It breaks up the total balance of a student account into 4 equal monthly payments. Those payments are due the first of the following 4 months from the time of the start of the payment plan. Typically, the enrollment is open as soon as you receive that first bill for the semester. So those dates that we discussed earlier here, the bill dates, July, December, and May, those are the dates typically where our payment plans are going to be opening, so that the students or the authorized users can go ahead and enroll into those payment plans if they'd like to. And that really can alleviate some of the stress of the billing sequence for our parents and families. I know that some people really enjoy that feature. So there also is a way that you can schedule the payment to automatically be deducted from your method of payment if it's an ACH method of payment. That I know some people really enjoy also, because you can kind of just set it and forget it. You don't really have to worry at that point. Let's see here. More information. So there is a $25 late fee if you miss one installment. If you miss an installment and you do not pay that before the next installment is due, you are potentially at risk of being removed from the payment plan. If you're removed from the payment plan, someone will reach out and let you know that you've been removed, and the entire balance will become due. So the due date is the first of each month for each of the installments. So to use a previous example, if you get the bill in July for a fall semester and you enroll in the payment plan after receiving the bill, your first installment is going to be due August 1st, then September 1st, etc., right? For the next 4 months. There's a breakdown here of scheduled and manual payments. I got into that already. Essentially, you can choose to schedule your payment, and what that does is it automatically deducts from an ACH method. There are some links on this presentation. I didn't mention this earlier, but this is available on our website as well. I'll make sure I give you guys the link so that you can access this, as well as a handout that we have made available that I think might be useful to you. So I'll provide that link here once I wrap up with the presentation and get to the question and answer portion. Okay, so holds and late fees. We have a lot of questions typically about holds and late fees in our office. They're pretty straightforward in general. Balance is less than $100 if it's past due. they're going to receive a hold. Our holds are typically applied a few days after the due date. It's going to prevent that student from obtaining a transcript or a diploma. A balance over $100 that's past due is going to have a hold that prevents future registration or adjustments to a current schedule. And then also we're going to limit access to transcripts and diplomas. So that's something to keep in mind, right? The hold, it does prevent your ability to register for a future semester. Um, so the idea is to plan to take care of the financial obligation of each term at that time, right? Because you don't want it to end up influencing a future term. For our late fees, this is the late fee for the general balances, not for payment plans. Payment plans have the per installment late fee of $25. But generally speaking, for a student that is not enrolled in the payment plan, if they have an outstanding balance that is past due, and it has been past due for a while, we will assess a late fee at a certain time in the semester. Typically, there's a grace period after our first due date where we don't immediately apply this late fee, but it will be applied towards the middle of the semester. It's going to be 10% of the outstanding balance up to a maximum of $100. Um, okay, third-party payments. So for this, essentially, a lot of people refer to these as scholarships, right? So in most cases, there's two main types of scholarships that students can receive. They're going to either receive a scholarship from a third party, or they're going to receive a scholarship from William and Mary. In the first case, they're going to usually get a check either made out to the student or made out to the college that the student is intending to enroll in. Those checks can be routed to the bursar's office. We'll process those. We will apply them to the student's account, and we will work with the scholarship to make sure that we adhere to their requests, right? They typically will send a letter accompanying a check as well that has information on, how they want us to proceed. For instance, if there's a credit balance, send the remaining back to the scholarship, etc. So if you have questions about your scholarship and how it applies to your account, or questions about how that works at all, please reach out to us. Ultimately, we do encourage that you have the scholarship send the payment directly to us. Typically, that works the easiest, but we do request that the student's ID number is included with that as well. That's very important for us to be able to pair the student with the payment from the scholarship in order to make sure that it goes into the correct student account. So feel free to have your scholarships forward their payments for the students directly to the bursar's office here at William & Mary. Our address is on our website. It's PO Box 8795, Williamsburg, Virginia 23187, but it's on our website as well. So award letters can be used as a way of memoing an account for an incoming amount from a scholarship as well. So if you don't have like the check from the scholarship, but you're anticipating that you're going to be receiving a certain amount, you can actually use that award letter as long as it comes on, the letterhead of the scholarship, or in an email from an administrator of the scholarship. It says, your student's name is going to be receiving X dollars at this term going to William and Mary. Feel free to reach out to us, and we can work with you to apply that to the account and potentially lower the balance due for that term. And then we will bill the scholarship if needed as well. So unless otherwise stated, if we receive a lump sum in the fall as a scholarship, if it just says scholarship for student and it doesn't say fall semester, we'll usually split it up between the fall and the spring. It's pretty common that scholarships do issue payments for the entire academic year. So it kind of makes sense for us to use that as our default operating method. But feel free to include correspondence with your submissions to our office that says, this is entirely for fall or spring, or whatever the situation may be. Again, we'll work with you in those cases. After the add drop phase is when we do send out scholarship invoices in case any of your scholarships are curious about our timing. You can access information about add drop on our website if you look up the academic calendar. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, there's the question about, so any internal scholarship, which I only touched on briefly at the beginning, if it's an internal scholarship that's issued by William and Mary, you're going to need to reach out to the financial aid department, because ultimately what happens is the various departments that issue those scholarships make those requests direct to the financial aid department, where they actually apply that money to the student's account and disperse it to the student through their student account. We'll do the refund eventually if there's a credit balance from that dispersal, but the financial aid department is the one that actually programs the money. So if you don't see that credit balance from an intended scholarship, or a reduced balance from an intended scholarship that's internal, meaning it's from William and Mary, you need to reach out to the financial aid department. Another type of third-party payment that we have is military benefits. This one is near and dear to my heart personally, as it's kind of one of my main projects here in the office. But the process starts with the Veterans Benefits Coordinator and our certifying school official. Her name is Carolyn Ward. She can be reached at vabenefits@wm.edu. She's the one to reach out to with pretty much any general questions about how to apply your military benefits to your education here at William and Mary. Um, Usually, we're able to place a memo on a student's account or a placeholder for funds that are going to be paid to the university by a military branch or entity of the government, and then we're able to bill the government, and that's as simple as that. So if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to VA Benefits and also the Bursar email address that's been provided a number of times and will be provided again at the end of the presentation. Our last big form of third-party payment that I'm consistently engaging with is the 529 system, right? So there's the prepaid 529, there's the invest 529. The prepaid 529 is one of those ones where you reach out to the plan itself, you indicate that you're intending to use the plan and where, and then they're actually going to generate a report that they send to us. We work with the 529 folks to apply those prepaid funds to the student accounts. It covers tuition and mandatory fees only. And ultimately, if you have questions about the application of your prepaid 529, you can reach out to us at bursar@wm.edu. For the invest, that's a bit different because typically you're requesting an amount to come to a college. So you can use the e-statement that we publish when we do publish it as backup and support for that request if your 529 plan needs that. And ultimately, we'd recommend that you have the payment sent directly to our office. We'll process that as an incoming student payment. For out-of-state 529 plans, please be aware we do not invoice out-of-state 529 plans. That is a request that comes up sometimes. You can use your e-statement that we provide on a monthly basis as a sort of an invoice or as a proof of required funds, right? So for your out-of-state 529, we recommend sending them a copy of your e-statement. And then also make sure that encourage them to include the student ID number in their correspondence if they choose to send us information or payment. It can be hard to track sometimes. So it definitely helps to include that 93 number. It's the 9-digit number that begins in 93. It's unique for every student and something that you can realistically send, and it's a lot safer than maybe a social security number or something like that. So, okay, refunds. I do see we have quite a few Q&As, so let's see. Okay, good. Looks like we got a lot. I'll get into that here in a second. Thank you guys for engaging here with the questions. I do appreciate that. Let me close these. So, okay, so for refunds, if the student has a credit balance, essentially a refund can be issued to the student. There's a couple of small caveats to that. If there's a payment that came through recently via check, for instance, we do need to wait 10 days for that check to clear. Some situations that are similar to that I'm sure you can imagine. Basically, there's two methods to be refunded. We can either refund our students via check or we can refund our students via direct deposit. We try to encourage our students to utilize the direct deposit feature for a number of reasons. First of all, it's more secure, but most importantly, it's faster. And in a lot of cases, these refunds can be time critical for our students. especially when it comes to receiving financial aid at the beginning of a term. That allows the student to then turn around and use those funds for additional things that they need to get ready for the term. So um, that can be set up in e-services. In order to designate a payment account that you already have listed, for instance, as a refund account, you just go to the refund section of e-services and you switch it to yes, I think, in the refund section. And that just indicates that you'd like us to refund you to that account if we can. And then we will automatically convert a check-based refund to a direct deposit refund if you've filled that field out for us. And we do appreciate that as well. So for non-Title IV balances, those may not be refunded automatically. We do refund Title IV stuff automatically because of the regulations surrounding the timeline of refund. But for general non-Title IV credit balance or an overpayment, we do have a refund request form available online that any of our students can access using our single sign-on through Banner. And they can go ahead and request a refund, just to indicate what type of credit balance they have, and we'll process that as soon as we can. If we have any issues processing that, or if they make any special requests, we'll reach back out to them as well to figure out what the issue is or help them resolve it. We do process these refunds for the beginning of the term. We have to wait until classes begin, but as soon as classes have begun, we'll start our process of refunding. Typically, we process refunds Tuesdays and Thursdays. There are special situations where that's not the case, and there's always going to be a special circumstance in a college this big. So we try, in a general sense, to do them Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we do try to gather our requests and add those to the batch of automatic refunds each refund day that we do our processing. Okay, did I lose my? There we go. 1098-T tax forms. So these are processed in January. We make them available to students and family members prior to the very end of January per our requirements. The tax form is not mailed, but we do make it available securely on e-services to download. The students must give your authorized users permission in order to access this. So this is something that happens sometimes where if your student sets you up as an authorized user, but they're not sure what a 1098-T is or whatever, and they'll click no, you may not have access to this when it comes out. All you need to do is either request one from your student or have them double check your authorized user privileges, and they can adjust that. And once they make that change to your authorized user account, you'll be able to view any 1098-T that we've published for the student under the statements section. For the authorization verification, essentially what we use is something called a passphrase. This is because of the federal FERPA regulations that require us to be very careful with student identifiable information. So essentially what we're going to ask you for when you reach out to us is we're going to ask you for your name, your passphrase, and then the ID number of the student that you're calling about. And that allows us to run a cross-check in our system through the Dean of Students office to verify that the passphrase is the one that's been assigned to you by our system. The passphrase thing is something that the student can set up in their Banner personal information section. It's something that can happen real early on as soon as the student does get access to Banner. They can access the personal information section and set up the passphrase. You're going to have one that's separate from your students. Your student's going to have their own passphrase, and then they can issue one to everybody that's on their authorized user list or emergency contact list, I believe, in the personal information section. But just to, it's just a generic word. It's not your password. We don't want the student's password for Banner or anything like that. We just want their passphrase, which is like mountain or baseball, and then the ID number, right? And so then we're going to do is we're going to check that on our side just to make sure that we're speaking with someone that's authorized to have the information that we have access to, specifically the financial information, right? So we can say, okay, well, your passphrase matches. Here's the information about the balance that you're requesting, that type of situation. If you have issues with your passphrases, you're going to want to reach out to the dean of students if you have issues actually utilizing that feature in the personal information section. However, if you're in your account in eServices, you have a passphrase, you're an authorized user, and there's something funky going on in eServices, you can reach out to Bursar. You can reach out to us about that, and we'll do our best to help you. All right, so e-services, you've heard me mention that a number of times. I should probably move this up sooner in the presentation. This is essentially the web platform where you can view, manage, and administrate your financial student account. So we try to keep most things contained here. There's a lot of information available on our general website, but a lot of the actual lever pulling and access that you're going to have to the student account is going to be over e-services. Here's an example of what it looks like. This is going to be basically what the home screen is arrayed like when you log in. You're going to see some announcements on the left. We try to keep that information updated to reflect pending items, action items, that type of thing, bills, insurance changes or charges, just general information that you may need. You're going to see this green bar here is your action bar. This lets you choose what you'd like to pay. It gives you a few options, like I'd like to pay a specific charge or pay a term balance or just pay the whole balance. You're going to see underneath that you have a kind of a breakdown of the health of the student account. You can click the view activity button underneath that and get a full breakdown by term of every single line item that's ever been charged to the student account. That's a really great feature that I recommend often when students or parents reach out with concerns about historical charges that were on their account, or they are working with a tax professional and they need more information. You can go into the view activity section and you'll be able to get a full PDF if you'd like, breakdown for each semester. So, and then below that, you'll see the statements. Those are presented to you both as the e-bill statements, and then underneath that, you'll see that there's also the 1098-T statements. Those are both going to be available in the statements section, depending on when the 1098-T is released, if you have one available. On the right side, you'll see that there's some navigation options. The important ones that I'd like to point out, the authorized user one is where the student, if they're looking at this screen, they would click on that and then they would type in your email, parents, if you're intending to have them set you up as an authorized user. That's it. They just put in your email, and then they have three options about account controls, basically, and then it sends you an email, and you can log in and register and create your own password from there for your authorized user account. The other one is the electronic refunds setup area, and that's simply where you go to designate one of your payment accounts as a refund account, like I mentioned earlier. All right, so I think we're wrapping up here. Yeah, so this is contact information. I'm going to leave it on this screen for a little while here, and I'm going to go ahead and take a look at some of these questions and see what we've got working here. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Sabrina, for putting our website link there as well. I wanted to add this as well, this link. There we go. So that link is a page that we've put together with some basic questions for new parents and students. At the bottom of the page, you're also going to see there's a link to our handout as well as this presentation. So if you have any, if you feel like something wasn't quite clear or you want to just reference this at a later time, you can access it. Okay, so questions and answers. Let's see here. What address do we send payments from 529s? What information needs to be on the check? Okay, great question. So from the 529, that's going to be sent to the Bursar address. So that's the PO Box 8795 address, unless you're sending it, what is it? Priority or not priority? FedEx, UPS, FedEx, the fancy direct mails. They are going to be going to a different address. Now, if you go to our website and you go to payment methods under the student accounts web page, which is going to be on the left, the navigation, there's payment methods. It's the third one from the top. You'll see here that we list not only our PO box address to send payment to, but then under that, payments via express or courier service, they're going to go to our 262 Richmond Road address. So that is available on our website. It depends on how you're mailing it, basically. We'll dictate which address to send it to. Both are going to bring them here to our office, however. What information needs to be on the check? Specifically, we need the student's ID. That is the most important piece. If you could also include the student's name, that helps too. Okay. How can a student give permission to parents to have access to the student's account? Okay, great. Any written statement? If needs a written one, what's the email for the student to send? Thank you. Absolutely. So I hope I covered this partially. Essentially, the student's going to give you permission by assigning you a passphrase and then creating you an authorized user account. The passphrase is going to allow you access to information over the phone or email. If you email us with your passphrase and the student's ID number and you have a question and the passphrase checks out, we will answer it with as much detail as is needed to answer your question. If you, however, want to access that information independent of us and you want to go and log in and use e-services, the student needs to create an authorized user account for you, which is as simple as typing your email address into the authorized user section of their e-services. If you have more questions about that, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Bursar as well. Are we able to, thank you, Sabrina, are we able to pay per semester versus each month to avoid that service fee? Yes, absolutely. So that's the default method that we have for our billing is that where we assess the charges for the semester and then ultimately they're due the first of the following month. So you do have the option to pay that per semester. What we're giving you then is an option to break that balance down into a 4-month payment plan, essentially. So I hope that answers your question. Is that July 10th to 13th bill date the first date that we are able to find out the full total tuition plus housing meal plans expected? So not necessarily. We do make our amounts for tuition and housing and meal plans available on our website. So you can essentially do some scouting ahead of time if you'd like. So for instance, on the student accounts page, the top left of the navigation bar, the first option is tuition and fees. And that actually allows you to go and look at our tuition and fees, not only historically, but for the coming academic year. So when you select that, it'll have you pick between undergraduate or graduate students. Depending on your student, you'll pick the correct one, and then it's either fall 23, spring 24 rates or summer 23 rates at this point. We do update this website consistently so that we give you the accurate amounts. Essentially, just to give you an idea, tuition and fee rates for 23-24 for an in-state undergraduate, $12,520. That's tuition plus the general fee. That does not include housing and meal plan. That information would need to be sought out under those departments areas of our website where they have their pricing listed as well. Also, I believe our catalog has that information too. All right, and I hope that answers your question. Thank you so much for asking it. Can we buy insurance on tuition? That is a great question. As far as I know, we do not offer that here. I think that I know that's been requested a number of times that I'm aware of, but I don't think we offer any type of collaborative liability insurance or anything like that. Let's see. Yeah, so that's something that we're considering. I know that it's been brought up out of concern from a number of parents that I've talked to, but we don't currently offer tuition insurance at this time. Is there any additional monthly interest or discount charges to the $50 setup fee? No. So that there is no hidden fees for the payment plan. The payment plan, it just requires that $50 enrollment fee, and that's it. We're not going to charge you a financing charge to break that balance down into this 4 equal installments. Just be aware that if you are late for an installment, we do charge the $25 late fee, but there is no other financing charges for the payment plan. Okay, my student has a Virginia 529 prepaid tuition contract. If the payment calls for under the contract is less than the amount billed by W&M for mandatory tuition and fees, do I need to do anything to let W&M know that an excess amount has been billed since the tuition amount is prepaid based on the contract? Basically, will they remove the excess without me having to take any action? Yeah, they should. As far as I know, I'd have to defer to one of my colleagues who frankly has a lot more experience than I do with prepaid 529 specifically. But I know that the people in our office work with the people in the 529 prepaid, specifically 529 team to make sure that we're reconciling balances and applying those unit credits appropriately. So yeah, I think what I would do in that situation is definitely reach out to us, inform us of your concerns, let us know what your expectations are based on the contract, and then we can also reach out to them from our end and kind of help you communicate to them and get that sorted out. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Is there a way to fund the balance on my student's account directly from an IRA or brokerage account and apply those funds as needed when statements are issued? Honestly, that's a great question. I'm afraid I'm not sure if I have a full comprehensive answer for you on this. I think maybe Rebecca, you'd need to reach out to us at Bursar if you'd like, if you feel comfortable, bursar@wm.edu, so that we can give you a more comprehensive answer because I don't have one off the top of my head for you today on that. Oh, Ivan to the rescue. Nope. Apparently they need to initiate payment. So that's how you're going to need to do that. You would need to do that, administrate that manually. Okay, so how is tuition for fall freshmen calculated if they haven't completed registration by August 1st to determine the number of credit hours? Great question, Rich. So our undergraduate tuition is a flat rate. Essentially, what this means is that every freshman is assumed that they will be attending at a full-time status. They're all going to be charged the same amount. And then ultimately, once the student does get here, they're going to do their orientation and they'll finish their registration, right? So that charge is something that we can assess because we don't necessarily need to know the total number of credit hours the student's going to be enrolled for as long as it's over 12 or over inclusive. Not using the payment plan, the amount due will be for the entire amount of that term due August 1 and Jan 1. That's correct, yes. So if you're not to enroll in the payment plan, the charge on the student account will be for the entire term. So essentially the first bill will come out and that entire term, it will have a due date of August 1. For the spring term, similarly, the tuition, fees, housing, meals, etc., will be due January 1. What is Title IV? Essentially, someone else could probably provide a much more comprehensive answer. This is federal financial aid money, so specifically money from the federal government. And there are some regulations about the timing with which we make that money available to our students. So that's one of the reasons why we refund Title IV money automatically, because we don't want to keep it away from the student, basically. We want them to have that. So next question, thank you, by the way, for that one. Per VA 529 accounts, the rules, as I understand, allow you to move funds to your non-529 account as a reimbursement of a payment already made from that non-529 account to W&M. Is there a specific reason why you're recommending the payment from the VA 529 go directly to W&M? Um, honestly, the specific reason why I'm recommending that is the ease of use. All you need to do is request a payment and it goes to us and you don't have to worry about it. That's it. So if there's some other reason why you'd like to maybe do it differently because you need to reimburse a separate account or you're managing multiple accounts, please feel free to do that as well. Ultimately, as long as the money does reach us to make a payment for that amount that it's outstanding, we'll process it. So. Thank you, Andrew. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. And also, Ivan reminds me, make sure you're checking all of the tax information available about your 529 account as well. There may be some stipulations or regulations surrounding that where it may be more prudent to have it sent to us. That's something that I would look into. Um, I'm certainly not the tax professional to ask there. So, do international students fill out the tax form? So that's lovely. So the 1098-T is the form I'm assuming you're asking about. And this is something that I believe can be furnished to international students upon request. And ultimately, we're the ones that fill this out, and then we'll be providing it to you. So I hope that helps. We do send out a request for a social security number or tax ID number earlier in the year prior to releasing our 1098-Ts. And this is designed so that if you do want us to have a 1098-T issued to you, that we are using the correct social security number or tax ID number for you as well. Okay, and yeah, I just want to reiterate that we are not the place for tax advice. I am not a trained tax professional. We do provide the form as per our requirement as the Bursar office, but ultimately we would always need to defer to someone that is a tax professional for any specific tax related questions. Okay, is there a way to set up a payment plan so the payments come directly out of a 529 plan? If not, what's the best way to send payment from the 529? So not that I'm aware of, unless your 529 plan lets you make an ACH, payment from it, and they give you the account number to do that. If not, the best way to send the payment from the 529 would be to make an individual. I don't know if you can reach out to the administrator of the 529, schedule coordinated withdrawals to match our payment plan. But that's what I would do if I wanted to be enrolled in the payment plan and use like an Invest 529, for instance. I would reach out to the administrator. I would ask them to help me out and see if they can coordinate with me to make 4 individual withdrawals, do the first of the months according to the schedule that we've discussed for the amounts that are on your payment plan agreement, which are made available to you when you sign up for the payment plan. So ultimately, I would just have them send a check, and I would aim to have them send it maybe 5 days before the due date just to avoid any delay. Sometimes mail does take a bit longer on our campus once it gets to campus to actually get to our office. So keep that in mind. Okay. Do you need to be notified of any scholarships received directly by the student? How do I ensure those funds are applied to tuition and not room and board when sent? Wonderful question, Chris. So we actually do not need to be notified, but the financial aid office does. They have a form that they send out where they request that students identify outside scholarships because they can sometimes conflict with federal aid or general financial aid. So they ultimately are going to be the ones that are in charge of doing that review and deciding whether or not there are any conflicts. If you want to ensure those funds are applied to tuition and not room and board, um, that's tricky. I think with a scholarship that's sent directly to the student, there's no way they can really ensure that the funds are tuition only. Typically, if the scholarship is tuition only, in my experience, the scholarship will send it directly to the college so that we can apply it to the tuition. And then we take a note of the scholarship being tuition only and we'll ensure that we don't refund any credit balance, and we instead refund the scholarship usually if there's a credit balance from a tuition only scholarship that conflicts with financial aid. I hope that answers your question, Chris. Do we know what the insurance cost is going to be yet for 23, 24? Michael, that is a great question, and it's one that I'm not sure of. I'll be honest, I don't know if I've seen that. I assume that we do have the cost. Let me. Okay, it looks like the website still got the 23, 22, 23 amounts on it. So I'd love to get back to you on that, Michael. If you want to reach out to us, again, you can reach out to Bursar at wm.edu. I'll do some legwork and at least get you an ETA of when those amounts will be available. And someone else that you can talk to about that. Okay, from Matt, we have, what is the business major and minor fee all about? Where does the insurance fee cost appear in fees or tuition? Okay, so the business major or minor fee is a great question, something I really didn't touch on at all, but that is something that is applied to students that are seeking a business major or minor as an undergrad. Essentially, it is a supplemental fee that is required if the student elects to pursue that minor or major. If they pursue the minor, they have the $1,250 per semester additional fee. If they pursue the major, they have the $2,500 additional per semester fee. Now, for the second part of your question, where does the insurance fee cost appear? So the insurance fee is going to be a fully separate line item if you're talking about the health insurance. On the bill, you're going to see tuition and fees lumped together in one line item. You're going to see meal plan on its own line item, housing on its own line item. Insurance also has its own line item. It's not going to be grouped. And thank you for your question. I hope that answers that. Okay, so Nancy, we've got Vanguard 529 uses Flywire, but I think W&M only uses Flywire for international students. Without Flywire, the process of getting a check to grandparent and then turnover to Bursar takes longer than the 2.5 weeks allotted from bill to payment. Is there some cushion allowed, or will W&M use Flywire soon for US 529s? Wonderful question. So first of all, I don't know if we're going to end up using Flywire soon for US 529s, but I think that's something that we're certainly able to look at. I know that we are always considering ways to make payment more accessible for our students and parents alike and family members, right? It's something that we want to continue to make easier and smoother, especially for people that are utilizing these 529s. So that's something that we're going to look into in terms of using Flywire for the US 529. Is there some cushion allowed? So that's a great question as well. Ultimately, contact our office. If you're in a situation where you're not sure if you're going to be able to make the deadline because you're working through a difficult situation like the one you've described, reach out to us and let us know, and say, hey, here's my passphrase, here's my student's ID number. I just wanted to let you know I'm working on finalizing payment for this balance, but I'm negotiating through a 529 such and such because of this, and the check's expected to show up here. If you reach out to us, we can make a note on the account. We can be aware of that. We can take that into consideration when we're going through and applying late fees, for instance. So that's a situation where in this scenario, to play it out, if your payment arrived after the due date, there would be a hold that gets applied to the student account. But as soon as the payment does arrive, the hold would be removed immediately. So ultimately, for the period of time where we did not have payment, the student wouldn't be able to change their registration or register. But once we did receive that 529 payment, and if it did clear the entire balance, then within 20 minutes, our system would remove that hold and the student would have full access to their registration, transcripts, etc. Okay, Kevin, So the tuition for our first semester will come at July and we'll be able to pay on the e-services by August. Just want to make sure. Yes, that's exactly correct, Kevin. But what you want to do is you want to make sure if you want to do the payment online, your student is the one that has to set you up with an authorized user account. That's something that they do in e-services that then gives you access to e-services. But yes, that's exactly how it's going to work in terms of the timeline. Okay, if the student has W&M scholarship and also Virginia 529 college plan, if we have an excess money, can we use it for other costs such as room and meals? Um, yeah, in most cases, yeah. That's one of those things where you need to double check with the scholarship provider to see what type of scholarship it is. And then in terms of your 529, as far as I know, unless it's the prepaid 529, the prepaid 529 is tuition and mandatory fee only, right? So then it would be up to your scholarship whether or not you can apply that money to room and board. But if it's an invest 529, you can use that money for any of the student's college expenses, up to, I think, certain minor limitations, but it's much more relaxed than the prepaid 529. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ivan. So definitely make sure, based on what type of 529 you have, what state it's from, et cetera, just check with your 529 plan as well to make sure that you're not violating any of their regulations or any of their tax-related provisions. Is there a tuition reciprocity agreement with any other states? Not that I'm aware of. Once the final fees have been determined by the board, and if it is a higher than the original notification and it takes us over the FAFSA number, does the offer get reevaluated? It's a great question. I'm not sure, as I'm frankly not involved with the financial aid side of FAFSA and financial aid awards or offers. I'm afraid I would need to defer this question to the financial aid office. I would reach out to them. They could be reached at finaid@wm.edu. Uh, okay, Kelly, I know you already answered this question, but if my student doesn't finish registration for classes until after the tuition is due, how do I know what loan amount to ask for the fall semester? Yeah, so Kelly, we're going to be able to assess bills to our students even before they've been able to register completely for our incoming freshmen. Those bills will be assessed along with our regular schedule. So you should be able to have access to that in time to ask for the proper amount of loan that you need. Uh, you can expect that we'll issue that e-statement. What did I say? What was the timeline on that? Let's go back. There it is. Yeah. So for the fall. So we should be able to give you a statement by July 10th or the middle of July. That statement will be due August 1st. And ultimately, at that time, if you need to, you can make the request for loan amounts and that type of thing. Prior to that bill being issued, the financial aid department is already going to be aware of your expected cost anyway, because as I stated, the students that are undergrads here at William and Mary, they all charged a flat rate. So it just depends on their domiciliary status. If they're in state or out of state, that's essentially going to be the main factor on the costs. And then what type of room and board situation they're utilizing as well. Okay. If a scholarship payment is received by W&M after a payment plan is already set up, will the payments in the payment plan be automatically reduced? Great question. Thank you. This is something I intended to talk about but didn't. The payment plan does automatically recalculate in not just if a scholarship payment is received, but if any payment is received, separate from the installments. So if you were to send in a check for $50 randomly, it would take that amount out of all of the remaining installments equally. No, I'm lying. Sorry. It would take $50 out of your next coming installment amount. So it does not affect equally, but I believe a scholarship does. So if the scholarship applied to the account, it would remove that amount out of each remaining installment at an equal value. Okay, if the student has W&M scholarship and also Virginia 529 college plan. Okay, so I think we already got that one. I'm going to go ahead and skip over that one. I know we're running real short on time here. Thank you guys for attending. If your student received an outside scholarship but is not receiving need-based financial aid, does the student send only to your office, or do they also need to share with financial aid? So great question. I don't think they technically need to share that with financial aid, but it's always a good practice too, just in case. It helps with their, their analysis of the accounts and their reporting and their notes and things. Ultimately, you should be fine. The OSRF outside scholarship reporting form is really easy and straightforward to fill out. It's just one page. So I would still recommend going ahead and doing that for the financial aid department, but I would say no, it's probably not necessary. Okay, will room and board also be due August 1? Will that also show up on e-services? Yes, Amy, that amount will be billed as well at the same time that the tuition and mandatory fees are billed. And yes, it will be due at the beginning of August for the fall semester. Okay, if you have two different parties, i.e. divorced parents, sharing the cost and utilizing the payment plan, is there a way for one parent to pay a portion of the balance due and leave the remainder for the other parent to pay? So, I mean, yeah, this is a great question too. We do deal with this often. And frankly, there isn't a super clean way to deal with this, right? So we do, request collaboration of all parties, but ultimately, you guys can each make payments towards that payment plan as authorized users from different authorized user accounts. But it's up to you guys to decide how you're going to do that. So if you'd like to alternate payments, for instance, or if you'd like to have one parent pay half the balance and then have the other parent start the payment plan and finish it, both of those options would be acceptable to us. It's outside of our control. It's frankly, it's up to you guys and your families, how you'd like to proceed, and utilize those authorized user accounts the way that we make them available to you to pay the balances due. So in your example, one parent could, yes, pay a portion of the balance due, whatever portion they decide is fair mutually, and then the remainder, the other parent could pay, yes. If you pay spring semester in December, does it go on 2013, 2024, 2024 1098T? I think I see what you're asking. So I think you meant 2023 or 2024 1098T. That's a great question. And typically, the way that it works for the 1098T is that we're reporting payments against qualifying tuition and related expenses. So the payments, when they come in, matters. When the charges hit the accounts, matters too. So we're billing in December, typically for spring. So those charges are going to actually be applying to the previous year. So when the payments comes in, matters to a certain degree, because if we don't receive payments for those qualifying charges, we'll roll them over to the next year, right? And till we do receive payments for those qualifying charges that we are able to report. So if we have like a, qualifying tuition and related expenses of this amount because we charged it in December, and you paid in December, then we would have a qualifying payment towards a qualifying charge to report during that 2023 year. If, however, you wait to pay until 2024 and we don't have any payment to report in 2023, then we would have a qualifying payment against a qualifying charge in 2024. I hope that helps. If I get a federal loan to pay, does the payment go directly to the university? So that's a great question. Essentially, the payment goes directly to the university into the student account, and then the excess credit balance, if there is one, is refunded to the student priority as a priority. So what that means is, yes, the payment goes directly to the university. We process it, we apply it to the student's account, and then if there is an excess, it's refunded to the student, and then they can use it how they deem necessary. It says that the waiver for insurance will not be available until 7/1, which is when the tuition bill comes out. How soon can we receive a revised tuition bill if we waive the insurance? That's great. So I can tell you that we don't reissue bills based on every little change. We only issue bills on a monthly basis. So that first bill, it may have the insurance on there. It shouldn't. I think we wait to assess the insurance in some cases until after the first billing because of the waiver timing. But I'm not 100% sure there. But ultimately, if you're able to get the waiver filled out, the next statement that does come out, you'll see that we've reversed that. You'll see a new line item where we're reversing the insurance charge. So you will still have a historical statement timeline that will show that. And furthermore, you can go into view activity and print the PDF out for the term that will show that the next day as well. As soon as we make that change to the student account, you'll see it the next day. Okay, so you've mentioned payments of student health insurance. This isn't an automatically billed item that we would need to waive since they already have insurance. It is, Andrew. This is an automatically billed item that the student does need to waive. There's a waiver process that's done where they provide a proof of insurance to the university. Otherwise, the student is assessed a charge for student health insurance. Thank you. Great question. Is work study paid to the student directly or the school? Another great question. So this is something that I believe is actually paid to the student directly. I would need to probably defer to someone. Let me see what Ivan says. Yeah, so it may depend on the work study, right? I would check with the financial aid department about this as well. They can be reached at finaid@wm.edu or 757-221-2420. Because I think it's maybe a case-by-case basis, depending on the work study program. How soon can we access e-services, and is room and board included in the payment plan? So you can access e-services as soon as the student has access to their Banner account. Once they can get into their Banner account, they can navigate to the student tab, and then student account, and then e-services next, right? And then once they're in e-services, they can set up a authorized user account for anyone that they want. So that, in our parents that are watching, anybody that needs to access e-service and wants to access and get comfortable right away and save it as a favorite, that type of thing. As soon as your student has access to Banner, they should be able to get you set up with that. Okay, next question. If you are paying from electronic checking, how many days ahead do you need to pay in order to ensure the bill is paid on time? So we use an ACH method. The ACH method will show that payment on the day that you make that transaction. But typically we wouldn't refund like a credit balance from an overpayment in that scenario until we've waited 10 days. So I hope that helps answer your question. Essentially, we will count that as a payment towards the amount that's due. Oh yeah. So where did my presentation go? There it is. Yeah, so we'll essentially say that payment is there towards the account, and as long as it doesn't end up being no account found error or some type of ACH error, you'll be fine. Is the insurance fee already included in the estimate so we can look forward to the discount if we know we have insurance for our child and they waive insurance? Great question. I'm not sure what estimate you're talking about. I'm assuming that might be a financial aid estimate. I don't know if they're including insurance. I would reach out to them to verify that. I apologize that I don't have a better answer for you there. Meaning if you authorize payment for August 1, is that appropriate, or do we need to submit it earlier? Yeah, that's correct. So if you make a payment that day, I would say, it's the latest possible acceptable time to make a payment for a due date of August 1. Yes. All right. Well, I think that's it. So thank you, those of you that are still here. I appreciate all the questions and your time. As stated before, if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can email us, you can call us, and we'll be here to answer your questions. And I hope you guys have a great day.